everybody, and welcome to the Parenting and Bonding with Children's Books podcast or show where we believe that books are magic and have the power to transform homes. So, on this podcast, we get to talk to the authors behind the magic to find out their true intentions behind the books. And tonight, we are here with Dave Cole. Hi, Dave.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, so am I. So, guys, we're going to talk tonight with Dave, and I'm going to give you a brief background on Dave, and then we're just going to get right into it. So, he's always been passionate about math. Dave, when you say always, what do you mean by that?
Oh, I love doing math puzzles and things from probably 4 or 5 on. I was always trying to figure things out, and math always kind of played into that.
That's awesome. Okay, so his background is in math, computer science, and mechanical engineering. And he has done everything from designing missile guidance systems, that's interesting, to teaching college computer science courses, to designing data center management software. He has coached many different math teams, taught math enrichment classes, and he also ran a summer math camp for elementary school students for a number of years. Our listeners are going to love that because we're mostly in that elementary age group. He found that one of the best ways to teach math was through stories and games. So we're here tonight to talk about his math series. And you've published 6 books in that math series, the Math Kids.
Correct. Book 6 just recently came out. Book 7 is should be out in October.
Hmm.
Book 8 is at the editor right now, and that will be out next April. And book 9 is somewhere up in my head right now, kind of wallowing around trying to figure out where to go. So I'll get started on that one pretty soon.
So many questions just popped into my head. I guess we'll start with this. What did I miss? Is there something else you want us to know about you, about your background?
No, it's just really it was interesting. So I was running this math camp,
Mhm.
and the very first year we asked the kids, started right out. I said, "How many of you are here because you want to be here? How many of you are here because your parents want you to be here?"
Wow.
And every hand was parents. I was summer vacation. No kid wanted to give up a week to do math. And I said, well, then my goal is to change your mind. So we had a great week. The next year, I sent out brochures and we started doing the math camp again. I got about 75% of those same kids back the next year. And I asked the same
Okay.
question the next year. How many of you are here because you want to be here? How many because of your parents? A lot more hands for because they wanted to be here. And some of those kids stayed with me for 6 years. Some of them wanted to come back and be kind of helpers and counselors at the end of it. So I said somewhere along the line, we must have hit the mark somewhere
Hmm.
that we got kids excited about math, and that was the whole goal, and really the whole goal of this series as well is to have some fun. We look at math, and let's take sports for example. We can go out and watch a baseball player, right? We can go watch whatever your favorite team is, or soccer, or football, whatever it is, and we can see it. Math, you can't see good math. It's just not. The math is too hard for you to understand as an elementary school kid,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of math that you can look at and see and say, that's really cool. I may not understand all of it, but it's
Hmm.
really cool that I'm going to be able to get to there. And that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So what came first, the camp or the books?
The camp came first.
Okay.
The books actually came from, I was going to write, somebody had said, wow, this camp is so much fun. My kids love it. You ought to write a
Mhm.
book on how to run a math camp. I actually started to write that book. And
Okay.
I was trying to give an example of here's how you could tell a story to kind of get math to come out. And I was about 40 pages into this little story. I went, well, shoot, that's going to be a whole book by itself. So I wrote it as a fiction book. And I had so much fun doing it that I wrote another one and I wrote another one. Somebody at work said, you ought to try to get these published. And
Mhm.
I contacted the publisher and said, I'll take the first 3. And do you have any more after that? And so I did
Wow.
the first 3, then signed the contract for the next 3, and then the 3 after that. And we're talking about going on from here.
So we're here to talk about the Math Kids series, right? But does that book on how to run a math camp, does it exist?
It doesn't. I'm still.
Okay.
I kept what I had. I would still like to go back and finish that because I think there's, and maybe I would broaden it out to how to use stories and games to enhance math. Maybe something like
Hmm.
that. I think teachers could benefit from that, and parents and all kinds of things. My kids and I still play math games all the time. If we are in the car and we look at the digital clock, I we will still say, okay, come up with a formula. So if it's like 312, my daughter will go up 3 equal 1 plus 2. It'll be that kind of thing. We're always just trying to find ways
Mm.
to incorporate math just in our everyday life and have some fun with it.
I think that that's awesome. And I asked if that book existed because as you were talking about the math camp, and as I was reading more about your background, I was wondering, is there a math camp? We're in Texas. I would love to send Aiden to a math camp, and I know they do a lot more like virtual, but to actually be able to go to a math camp, I think would be really cool. So you may have driven me to look and see
Yeah,
if one
and I
exists
never did
in
really
our area.
research to see if there's something out there, but it is amazing. So we talked about economics a little bit in the class. So we were talking about
Hmm.
supply and demand. That's a pretty dry subject. We
Yeah.
made it into a game of tag where certain people were animals and certain people were predators and certain people were food. So you had to
Hmm.
go, if you were an animal, you had to go and tag food in order to eat. And what we started doing is reducing the amount of food. Well, now I had animals that were going hungry. And then we
Mm.
started introducing more predators, and the predators were killing all the animals, and some predators didn't have enough to eat. And they were just playing that game. But when we went back into a classroom and started talking about that, said, what went wrong? They said, well, there wasn't enough food to eat. And they got it. They got the concept of supply and demand. And from there, we could actually talk about the math a little bit. But first, they had fun, and then they kind of got the concept, and then you could talk more about it. So it was those kind of things I think that really helped to bring out the math side of things without just throw another worksheet at them.
Yeah, that sounds so cool. I wonder, so the Math Kids series, I asked authors who come on the show, if you had to give like an elevated pitch, what is the book about? Uh, the series, what would you say?
Yeah, it's for elementary school kids. They
Hmm.
started in fourth grade, and they're now book six, have just finished fifth grade. But
Hmm.
they use math. They form a club because they want to solve math problems. They like doing that. But mysteries started happening. There were some burglaries, and there were in one book, and there was a speeding ticket that a teacher's son had in another book. And they used their math to solve these mysteries, either help their friends out or help they get involved with the FBI on a case, and
Hmm.
where they use their math to figure things out. Each book has an overarching math concept. So the very first book was called The Primetime Burglars, and
Hmm.
we talked about prime numbers. That's kind of plays into their solution. So you learn a little bit about prime numbers, but in the meantime, you get a good mystery story that's hopefully fun to read as well.
Yeah, and do you have your books with you?
I do, I do. So
Wonderful.
yeah, got a whole pile of them here. So
I'll give you the screen so you can show the covers of a couple of them if you want.
sure, sure. So this was the first book, The Primetime Burglars, and it's interesting. The books have grown over time. So this first book was, I don't know, 100 pages or so. This is the latest, The Triangle Secret, and that one comes in at 180 pages. So I'm doing like twice as much work, but I think I get paid the same. I don't know, but so Incorrect Solution was book number 5. This is one of my favorites, an encrypted clue. The kids start to learn about codes and ciphers. An unusual pattern. There's a lot of patterns in math, so this one kind of talks about some of that. And then a sequence of events is a book where one of their friends' fathers gets kidnapped, and they have to go rescue him. And he leaves them a secret message that involves some math in order for them to figure it out. So yeah, they've been fun to write.
They seem so fun, like they were so fun to write. I noticed so it's the same kids every book. What was the inspiration behind the characters in your books?
Well, the first book only had 3 kids in it, And it
Okay.
was Stephanie and Jordan and Justin, which happened to be the names of my kids. I was never good at character names.
Oh.
My daughter, after the first book, said, "Yeah, this isn't going to fly, Dad. You have to have another girl in the book. You have to have, and not just another girl in the book. You have to have girls that can go and have serious conversations without the boys and not just talking about boys." So she said, "Girls are serious, and I need you to do that." So I wasn't going to argue with her. So I introduced Catherine in book number 2, and then the 4 of them have been around since then.
Okay. Okay. So I love that your daughter took she like took command of the situation and told you what needed to happen. And I think
Very
that
much
that's
like my
so
daughter. Yes.
yeah. I think that that's so important to, to have all the characters like have dynamic personalities and all of them are able to like take charge and have serious conversation. So that's awesome. I'm so interested in your series. I have not read it yet, but I planned to read your series with Aidyn. I think I love how you combine storytelling with math. I think that, I know that you have a camp and it would help in so many classrooms, as you said, just with teachers and explaining math. One of the things that it's funny, I did this survey the other day. A mom put out a survey and she was asking if we help our kids with their homework. And Aidyn's only in second grade, he's not getting much homework. But the thing when he does bring math that he's confused about is all the changes in the processes, like how to get to the answer. And oftentimes I can help him, like I know the answer, but I can't explain it in this new way that teachers are explaining it. So how do you like adjust for that, I guess? Do your books go not into the how, but just
Actually, they go into a little bit of the how, because there
okay.
are throughout the books there are also puzzles and things that they're solving. So you'll see some little math things. In fact, it'll even say in the book, it'll say, "Stop. If you want to go solve this puzzle on your own before the math gets due, go out and do it," and it'll kind of restate the puzzle. I had a teacher contact me, and she said, "We do your math books as read alouds. When we get to
Mm,
a spot where it says stop and there's a puzzle, the kids are always excited. They break up into groups and they go solve the puzzle before we talk about how they do it, how the math works in the book." And I do take into account. One of the kids may say, "Oh, all you have to do is this," and one of the other kids will say, "Well, I don't get that." And someone will say, "Oh,
mhm.
another way you can do it is this." So it's kind of teaching a lesson multiple ways to get to the same answer and different ways of solving problems. There's
Yeah.
also an appendix in the back of each book that talks a
Hmm.
little bit more about the math and not just the math. It could be other topics that get brought up. I talked about one of the books, The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World, and in the appendix I talk about that a little bit. And each book also comes with a teacher's guide, and teachers have reached out to me and said, "Hey, this is great. There's other activities I can do based on this book." And not all of them are math. Some of them are art, and some of them are more social studies or something else. But I think math ties into so many different subjects, art and music, architecture, that it's a great way to pull it all together.
Yeah, math is literally everywhere, and it's good that your books are showing that. I'm wondering because I know there are so many kids that might be afraid of math right now, and they look at math and it feels so heavy. What advice would you give to parents? And I know your book is a major one, but what advice would you give to parents who want to get their kids interested in math?
Yeah, it's trying to show them. I'm very big into mathematical patterns,
Hmm.
and there are series of things. One of the books talks about, it's called the Fibonacci sequence, and it's just starts with 1 and 1, and then the next number is you just add 1 and 1 to get 2, and then the next number I just add 1 and 2 together to get 3, add 2 and 3 together to get 5, and so on. And one of the girls is really fascinated with this series. So that in itself, the math is really easy. We're just adding a couple numbers to build this series. But I go through in the book how this relates to nature. All number of flowers. If you go out and look at flowers in your yard, all of them will have the number of petals. The number of petals is going to be a number in the Fibonacci sequence. So whether it's 5 or 8 or 13 or 21 or 34, that's how many petals end up being on there. So it plays into nature, and we talk about that a lot. I had a math professor contact me and said, that may be the best explanation I've seen of the Fibonacci sequence ever, just because you brought it to life. And so kids can see things like that and go, oh, math isn't just multiplication tables, and it isn't just things like that. And if we get kids to see that math is interesting, they're a little bit more apt, I think, to say, yeah, I got to go through some of the, the worksheets and things to get there. But there's some really cool stuff building up, and let's see if we can get there.
I'm interested to know if you've had kids read your books, or, parents buy the books for their kids and they come back to you and say, my kid hated math before and now they love it. Do you get reviews like that or testimonials?
I did. I got
Yeah.
a woman contacted me and said, my son really resisted reading the book. I had bought this for him and just refused to do it, and came back and said, wow, this is a little bit more, math is a little bit more interesting than I thought, and has now gone on to read the rest of the series. I've had other kids that have said, you know what, still not thrilled with math after reading your book, but I like the stories, and that's okay too, right? Sometimes it's just, we don't have to beat kids over the head. Sometimes just hearing it in the background enough, they'll get it, right? Just like reading to your kids all the time. They're not going to love every story, but they're going to learn to love reading and love books, and that's going to take them so far in the world.
Yeah, I love that. I talk to parents all the time about just the importance of just keep going, keep reading. We talk about the importance of reading, not just for like bonding, but that vocabulary development. And if you just keep saying the words, because books use much more advanced vocabulary than most of us do in just conversation day to day. So if you just keep reading the books and giving them those words, it'll build up over time. And you're right, even if they don't fall in love with math, reading the books gives them a foundation that they'll recall, when it's necessary or later in life. So,
I've actually had the opposite happen as well. Kids who are really into math, but weren't so much into reading.
Okay.
Got a little bit more interested in reading because there was some math that was involved. So it can actually work kind of both ways. So I was always glad to hear that too, because reading is just so important, and anything you can do to get kids interested in the reading, is great.
You know what? Dave, I don't know why that didn't come to me right away, because I have parents in the group that say, my kids are into numbers. Like, do you have books that focus on numbers and not really into reading? Can't get him to read. And I just was looking for a book for my nephew. He's 7. And it was very hard in the bookstore. There was like a very small section of books for kids, his age, that focused on numbers and really built a story around it. So there's
Right.
such a necessity for parents to know that your series exists and it's helping children and families in general, in that vein. So thank you for pointing that out the other way around.
Yeah. I'm one of those. Maybe I'm strange, but I kind of like both sides. I've always been an avid reader, but I've always liked working with numbers. So to me, this was the best of both worlds, and it's why I can write the book so easily, because we got the math background and how to this educational side of things to make it fun, and then I just write a story around it. I every book starts with the math, but then
Yeah.
I develop a story out of it.
I was going to say, it sounds like the books are coming out pretty quickly. You said you have the first 6, and you have the one coming out just released, another one in October, and the other one sitting up in your head. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, we do. We've been releasing 2 a year. I would probably
Okay.
do more, but they're publishing schedules, and I work with
Mm.
an artist, and she's got an illustrator. She's got work to do on it, and there's editing, and the process is just so much more than I thought it was going to be when I got into it. So when I finish a book, it is about a year before it is actually published, before it actually
Okay.
comes out. So when I turn in a
Okay.
draft, about a year from now is when I'll see it, and see it come out.
Okay. So I wonder if you would have any advice for any aspiring authors that we have in the group.
I would say, and I think anyone's an aspiring author for one thing,
Yeah.
including kids. I think we need
Hmm.
to get kids to write and tell their stories. And yes, the grammar may not be great, the story may not be great, but it's starting to voice, right, and get your voice out there. And whether you're doing it orally or you're doing it written, I think that's important for people who really want to publish books. There's a lot of books that get published. I happen to go with a traditional publisher for this series, plus another young adult novel that I wrote. But it's so much easier to self-publish now as well. Um, and just if you've got an idea and you're passionate about it, just keep at it. Get lots of people to read it. Do the other side before you write. Read a lot. Reading is so important to be able to write later on, because you pick up how do I do different voices, and how do I picture a scene and things like that. So yeah, just keep at it.
Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you want to say to just the parents in the group about your books?
No, I would love to get feedback. That's always great when people send me feedback. I got we're part of there's a program in India called Get Lit, which is an online reading. They're trying to encourage reading in India, which is really
Yeah.
interesting. Um, uh, they produce a ton of computer scientists and mathematicians in India, but they're not a big reading country, which is interesting. So they're trying to promote that. So my books are on there, and they said they've been really, really popular. Again, kids who like the math end up doing some reading as a result of that. So that's been fun. The books have also been translated now into Mongolian. They're being translated into for Turkey, South Korea. So they're starting to get picked up across the world. There's illustrations throughout the book. They're not a picture book, but I work with an incredible young artist out of Canada that I didn't really know what my characters looked like until she showed me, and now I can't picture them any other way than the way she drew them. And now after she drew them the first time, now I'm starting to develop traits around what they look like and how that might play into their everyday life. So it's the nice thing about a series is each book is standalone. You could pick up book 6 as the first book and read it, but
Okay.
better to go from one on, just because you see the character arc, you see how they change and they mature and their friendship changes, and it and it
Hmm.
and it hits challenges like any other, like any friendship that we have, and they have rocky spots, but they stick together, and they work together as a team, and they find out teamwork is really important to the whole process.
Sounds and the big thing that I picked up there was the illustrator, the fact that she brought the characters to life for you. I think it's not it's rare for the illustrator to kind of get the recognition that they deserve. So so I
Yeah, no,
think that
she's
that
been an
yeah,
important part of it, and not just the cover, their illustrations throughout the book. That
yeah.
and she'll send me some rough drafts, and I
Hmm.
don't think I've ever made a comment saying no, that doesn't really fit. It's just she reads the book, she gets it, she knows these kids really, really well, and she can just draw them and picks up the situation exactly, and it's like, yep, that's what I would have drawn if I could draw, which I cannot.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. So, where are your books available?
It's definitely on Amazon.
Mhm.
You can find them there. You'll also find them in bookstores. They're not everywhere, but there's a lot of bookstores that have picked them up. And I do some occasional signings and things there. I also have a website. It's just themathkids.com right there on the bottom, and that will show you how to get to all of them. It'll let you read the first chapter of every book, so you can kind of get a feel for what the book looks like. Might be enough to get your kid interested in reading that, and illustrations, and if I'm on blogs and things like that, I'm pretty active with that, and I respond to anybody who contacts me through there, because I love to hear from readers and get suggestions from them, and get hey, I didn't like that you did this, and I say, oh, well, that's an interesting point of view. So and somebody else will go, I love this, and I can always tell if a kid likes it. It's by the number of exclamation points. So I was reading somebody's review, and book 1 was this is a great book, exclamation point, exclamation point. But book 4, 17 exclamation points. I think they really liked book 4. So that's
Count
how
on Dave to do the counting.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm a numbers guy. What can I say?
Oh gosh. So make sure, if you're listening to this, just the audio on the podcast, it's themathkids.com, themathkids.com. And you can also find Dave on Facebook. His author page or book page is just at the Math Kids. So make sure you guys check that out. I'm so excited that we had a chance to talk to you today, and super excited to dive into your series. If you don't have anything else, we'll wrap up for the night.
Okay. No, it's been great. I appreciate the time and the shout out there. And like I said, reach out to me if you got any questions on the books. Happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Dave. We were here tonight with author Dave Cole, and we talked about his series, The Math Kids. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.